my loves. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Dustina. This is Spiritually Boujee Astrology, and we are going to take a look at the astrological transits of February 3rd to February 9th. Now, one of the things that I announced in the month ahead forecast is that all of my readings are on special, or at least my one-on-one sessions are for the month of February. Now, my readings are much like astrological life coaching sessions, and whatever we talk about in that session is going to be catered to whatever you need to focus on. We can go over your life. We can go over your karma. We can go over your business. We can go over relationships. We can go over anything and everything that you need to go over, even if it's just an hour-long venting session. I've had plenty of people do that too. You get the venting session and then you get the astrology and making you understand why life is going the way that it's going. An hour-long session with me is $35. A 90-minute session with me right now is $50. You can go directly to the website, www.thespirituallyboujee.com. Go to astrological consultations. And I've even got my one-on-ones like with a big tagline saying February special. So you know exactly where to look and where to book. Okay, moving along. When it comes to the vibration of this week and what we're going into and what we're dealing with, whether it was something over the weekend or it's something directly about the impacts of this week kind of feels like the first hit of the bong for those of us that actually listen to the February month ahead. You're going to know what I'm talking about. Like so much of the vibration now feels like a bong, and that there's a frequency changing and we're waiting for something to stop moving so we can get a grip. When it comes to what we dealt with over the weekend with that Venus Neptune North Node conjunction, and I'm so over this Neptune North Node stuff, guys. I'm so over it. You guys know how I feel about Neptune. I've said it all the time. He's kind of a dick because he never likes to be seen clearly. And it very much emphasizes the vibration that we're in right now. Nobody's making sense. Nobody knows what they're doing, but everybody's very fueled by their belief system. Whether that belief system is logical or not begs to question. And that is encompassing a lot of the vibration. And the thing about Neptune and the North Node is it hasn't even gone exact yet. It doesn't go exact until later this week, the week that we're going into. It hasn't actually been exact. It's just been this clouded force of people making certain decisions and following certain judgments, but big air quotations on judgments, because again, we're so fueled by something. One of the things that I started to say last week is like we get very lost in the sauce and we're becoming very fueled, but not that just like that. It was just compelled, and there was something that was just taking over. And for some of us, we didn't want to be connected to reality. Like I want to go live in the past. I want to be somewhere else. I want to see something else. I'm looking for in other directions, looking for other things. But there's something about this vibration that when you're tuned into it in the active sense, it's leading to something that we are not seeing clearly. And I can't stress that enough. And the Venus-Neptune conjunction that we had over the weekend, for a lot of people, there was something that impacted them that they did not see coming. Now, for a lot of people, it had to do with health, and I'm not letting go into health stuff. The health impacts to this spring are so large. And if you are having health issues, or if you were before this time frame, like it's like any little spark is activating something that wasn't even there before. Or if you had a small issue, now it's like a much bigger issue. It's crazy. And the thing is, like, even if it hasn't quite hit yet, it's like there's something building that, again, we're not seeing. But for a lot of people, the Venus-Neptune conjunction of the weekend has had an impact. For other people going into this week, there is an impact coming. And it feels like that first stone being thrown into the water to see how big the waves could be, how big they will be, what will happen from here. And it feels like one first big stone hitting, impacting, and then everything that follows is that rippling wave effect. There is an impact to this week. For some people, again, it was over the weekend. For other people, it is going to come through right at the first part of the week for the majority, whenever Venus goes into Aries and as the actual week progresses from there. And this will be the first entry of Venus going into Aries. Now, all in all, I'm personally a fan of Venus and Aries energy, but given the condition of Mars, the host of Aries, the ruler of Aries, and the fact that he's retrograde, a lot of Venus's entry feels like a reaction. And for even more people, it's going to kind of feel like that emergency call. And I kind of talked about this in the month ahead forecast. It's like you're calling the one person that you feel like is going to be able to break through to somebody's like, we really need them to listen. I really need him to hear me. I really need him to pull his head out of his ass. Who can I talk to? Who can get through? We all seem to have that lifeline person. Sometimes you are the lifeline person. You know, when you get that call, like something's going on with your kid, with your brother, with your sister, with your parents, that nobody else can get through but you. And some parts of this week feels like making that kind of call. For some people, it's not going to be this week. For some people, it's going to actually be the later part of the month. But it really kind of comes down to how people are reacting to the impact. And we are in a volatile energy. I warned for months that as we got into spring, it was going to get messy and it was going to get volatile. And this is not even the most volatile time. Yay. But there's a lot that's about to come through. Now, when it comes to the first part of this week, there's something very sticky to Monday and Tuesday. And for some people, it's going to be kind of that carryover effect from the weekend. For other people, it's like something is going to come back around. And it's almost like a little bit of unfinished business. But for other people, it's not going to be unfinished business. It's going to be a test to see if your response is going to be different than the way that it was before. There's something very sticky, emotionally triggering. And it's like whatever comes through, whether it was over the weekend or Monday, it leads to a reaction. It leads to a response. And that response is going to be Tuesday forward. Because on Tuesday, that's when Venus is going to enter Aries. And immediately after Venus enters Aries, Jupiter is going to turn direct. There is an arrival. There is a response that triggers turnaround. And in that turnaround, there's a knowledge exchange, and that comes through in the transits, but it can also be spoken through in the energy as to how it's going to continue from here. There is a knowledge exchange. There is an information exchange. There is something that comes through, some kind of call, some type of verdict, some type of response, some type of information that is going to come through that leads to the turnaround. By the end of the week, we will also be in a Mercury cazimi. When Mercury comes into the heart of the sun, there usually comes some level of clarity, some kind of discovery, some type of information, conversation that changes our mindset. And considering that cazimi is going to follow Jupiter turning direct in Mercury's sign, so much of the energy speaks to ideas, inspiration, but the logical kind. What needs to happen to progress forward in a way that's going to be fair-minded and like-minded. Over the last few weeks, while Venus was in Pisces, a lot of the responses have been emotional spiraling. After Venus goes into Aries, and after Jupiter turns direct, building into the Mercury cazimi that happens at the end of the week, And what will immediately follow that Mercury cazimi is going to be next week's full moon in Leo. There is a vibration that's going to start to build after whatever the impact is. And each day this week, going even into the next week, you will feel the build. You will feel an uptick where there has been a lag in certain energy. You will feel the buildup. You will feel some level of adjustment or change. And if you have been foggy or exhausted or fatigued and not necessarily in a good place, there will be some kind of uptick, and that will feel good for a lot of people. But it's a motivated uptake. It's a fueled uptick. There's something else in there that requires more emphasis, more understanding, more awareness, and more action. And then for a lot of people, it's not just actions, it will also lead to reactions. For some people, there will be clarity about how to take steps forward. That would be an action. A reaction would be, what just happened? Who got hurt? Oh my God. And you must respond in some way. There is a difference. There is a spark for a lot of people this week about feeling more empowered, wanting to take back more power in a lot of ways, not letting fear grab, and not letting emotions continue to consume and take over. But we still have this fueled belief. And some of the response is going to be against other people that have been following their beliefs. Now, for some people, that sounds very religious. I'm not meaning it to sound religious. We can all look at Twitter, I still call it Twitter, or your social media feed, or the headlines, and see plenty of things where certain people in positions of power have been very fueled by their belief system. But there's going to be responses to that too. Whether that is internalized responses, things that are going to happen in our country for some, in the company, if you're dealing with this in a more microeconomic sense, in your family. And the thing about Venus going into Aries is it's in a fire sign, but she's also in her detriment. So part of the energy in the long run can lead to something that feels very sacrificial. But it's like, again, we need the spark to understand where the sacrifice will need to be made later. So there is a spark to this week. And I want you to be aware of that and be prepared for that if you haven't already felt and dealt with it in some way. So let's get into the week. Let's get into Monday. Let's get into these transits. First things first. On Monday, the moon is going to be in Aries for the majority of the day. It's actually not going to leave Aries until we get into the late evening time. But what's interesting is the very first transits that we deal with are the only ones while the moon is still active. And then afterwards, throughout the whole rest of the day, the moon is going to go void. So let's talk about those first quote, quote, active transits. And that has to do with between 3 and 5:30 a.m. The moon is going to make a conjunction to Chiron, and then it's going to hit an actual square to Mars. Now, the moon and Mars right here, they're in mutual reception. Mars is in the moon sign. The moon is in Mars' sign. But the interesting element is this second square between Mars and Chiron. And what I said in the month ahead forecast, I'm going to kind of repeat right here. For some people, there is based off of certain misactions with Mars, we're going to have a meeting about a fix. And the moon Chiron feels like the meeting about a fix. But for other people, this feels like something or someone coming back around, and it reopens an old wound. And it has to do with the fact that Mars, again, is retrograde. coming in and entering its second square to Chiron. And with the moon being involved, this speaks to talking about the wound, moon conjunct Chiron, talking about the fix, moon conjunct Chiron. But also with that square to Mars, there is an understanding to the emotional reaction. There is an understanding why certain things went the way that they did before. And what's interesting is whenever it comes to Mars and Chiron, their square is actually not exact yet. It goes exact later in the day, like in the evening time. So we'll kind of cover it a little bit more. But the moon in this moment, kind of hitting that conjunction to Chiron and in that square, it's like letting us know the inkling of something that's about to come together, but it hasn't come together quite yet. But it can also set the stage for like where the vibration is going to be for the entire day. Now, again, for us here in the States, this is happening in the overnight hours. So it's like 3 to 5:30 a.m. For some people, that means this is the vibration that you have to deal with first thing Monday morning when you go into work. For other people, this is the part of the vibration of what you're dealing with late Sunday night going into Monday. So some of you guys are going to bed knowing about this wound, this area that needs to be healed, this area that needs to be fixed, knowing that there's a trigger or an old situation coming back around. Like you already seen the first DM, you just haven't responded yet. And you're like, I don't have the vibration for that. I don't have the energy for that. I don't have the capacity for that. And that's fair. Now, after this moon Chiron, moon square Mars vibration, for the entire rest of the day until the moon changes signs, the moon is void. And what we tend to notice is whenever the moon is void, like we don't necessarily get a whole lot of things going. And that really tells me again that with Monday, yes, there can be triggers, but we don't necessarily need to have the response quite yet. I don't know that everybody will be responding quite yet. I feel like the response and the reaction or whatever it is going to be more followed into Tuesday and beyond. And I'll explain that as we continue. So now the next thing that's going to happen is going to go exact between 3:42 and 3:55 p.m. So I got this at 3:30. And this is going to be whenever Mercury, 11 degrees, 15 minutes of Aquarius, is going to hit the trine at 11 degrees, 16 minutes in Gemini. So again, I've got this at 3:30. You guys know I do it by the hour, every half hour situation, so that way everybody can see it kind of as close as possible. Mercury is in the higher authority, applying something to Jupiter, and this will be the last aspect to Jupiter before Jupiter turns direct, literally 12 hours from now. Right after we get into the 4th, it is around 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. That is whenever Jupiter is going to turn direct. So we have something in this vibration that feels like news, information, communication that is going to trigger a turnaround. And now I'm also paying attention to one other thing. Venus. Venus is at the final degrees of Pisces the entire day on Monday. This is Venus's last day in Pisces, in Jupiter's sign. Now, for some people, whatever happens in the mid-afternoon, that communication information between Mercury and Jupiter, it's one of two directions, depending on how this human effect lays out for some people. Now, this Mercury-Jupiter trine, this is the most exact right here, but we're building to it all day, and we will still be in it as we go into the 4th. So this is why I'm about to say it's going to depend. For some people, this is going to be going in one direction. For other people, it's going to go into a different direction. If it has to do more in this time frame, Mercury's trine to Jupiter can be a completion. It could be telling somebody that we need a break, that we need to leave, that we're going to go do something different, that we're going to go in a different direction, that we want something different. There can be a vibration here that speaks to something coming to a close. And that close will lead to the turnaround because, again, Jupiter is about to turn direct. If this more falls into the vibration of the 4th, then this can be the news, the communication of the arrival of something or someone new. For some people, you're going to know that something's about to end Some people are getting fired or terminated or whatever. For other people, this is going to be like, okay, so starting tomorrow, this position will be filled. And we're going to be able to start training our new person, our new hire. Think of it this way. And what's coming to a close, so to speak, is the vacancy, the void. So it doesn't have to be negative, but it also doesn't have to be positive. For some people, we're going to be communicating something coming to an ending. For other people, we will be communicating something that's more of a beginning. So I want people to be prepared and pay attention for either one whenever it comes to the third and the fourth. Okay. Again, Mercury and Jupiter trine, we're building to it all day. We will remain in it all day. It's just the most exact between 3:42 and 3:55 p.m. Central Standard Time. As we get into the evening time between 8:35 p.m. and 10:01 p.m., I got this at 9:30 on the screen. This is when we go through our exact square between Mars and Chiron. So you can see this here. I've got Mars 19 degrees, 35 minutes retrograde, re-entering a square with Chiron at 19 degrees, 35 minutes. So it is very much exact right here. And in this time frame, during that Mercury Mars square, this is also when the moon is going to change signs. So at 9:30, I've got it. It's 5 minutes before it changes signs. It actually goes into Taurus at 9:34. So we're right there. For some people, again, we are talking about someone trying to come back around, trying to do something, and it like reopens an old wound based off somebody that's been there for a while and their misactions because Mars and the not acting right while and during its retrograde. It's like, again, we're reopening an old wound. For other people, it's because of someone's misaction, Mars retrograde. There's a fix that is necessary. There is a response that is necessary. And that feels true because within an hour, the moon is going to go into Taurus, and you can see that right here. But right after midnight, so I'm going to keep this same vibration going as we go ahead and go into the fourth. But for a lot of people, for some people, whatever starts to happen late on the third is going to carry over into the midnight hours onto the fourth. So some parts of this is going to continue. Chiron and Mars are still in their square right after midnight at, where's it at? 12:30 to 2:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. So I've got the screen at 12:30. Pluto is going to go through a square with the moon, pushing an agenda, pushing a trigger, pushing a fear in a lot of ways, pushing for a change, pushing for an awareness, pushing for an awakening. This will have a long-term effect because we're talking about fixed signs here, but this is also the same few hours where Venus is going to go into Aries. The moon is now in Venus's sign. And so much of, again, the vibration at the first part of the week feels like a response. So I'm going to bump this to 2:30 because that's going to allow for Venus to go into Aries. The moon is still going through its square from Pluto. Mars and Chiron are still very active in their square. Mercury and Jupiter are almost a full degree apart, but they are still active in their trine. For a lot of people, the vibration of the third and the fourth are very, very connected. Especially if you're one of those late owl people like me, like you end up staying late, whether you like it or not. Like your body just doesn't want to, the mental doesn't shut down. So there's that. Now, again, Venus's entry into Aries. This is the first entry that she's going to make. The next one's not going to happen until April. She is going to be here for roughly the next 50 plus days until she retrogrades back into Pisces. So there is something about Venus coming in here that is a response. It is a reaction, given that the moon has just gone through a square from Pluto. That response can be a triggered response, a triggered reaction. Given the fact that Mars has just hit that square with Chiron, there can, again, something coming back around that reopens old wounds, letting us know that something that has not gone appropriately needs to be fixed. And again, even the fix is a reaction. So it really kind of comes down to how you're vibing in this. Okay. Again, 1:57 a.m. Central Standard Time. This is when Venus is going to re-enter Aries. It's right there simultaneous to the Pluto moon square. And then immediately after that at 3:41 a.m. Central Standard Time, so I'm going to bump this to 4:30, Jupiter turns direct. The reason I'm corresponding Venus and Jupiter's vibrations so much to one another is because Venus was leaving Jupiter's sign, and they're one, Venus's sign change, but two, Jupiter turning direct, happening so tight to each other, again, feels like a response. It feels like a reaction. And it really comes down to what triggered said reaction. Venus is an arrival. Jupiter turning around is wanting to take something back forward. Now, it's not going to be a quick forward motion whenever it comes to Jupiter. Jupiter has been at 11 degrees of Gemini for about 2.5 weeks at this point. He will remain 11 degrees for another 2 weeks. So the arrival will instigate a turnaround, but the effects, the benefits of said turnaround will not be immediate. So again, comparing it to somebody getting hired and getting brought in, day one, they're not going to rock your world. No, they got to do paperwork. They got to get their picture taken. They got to go meet everybody. They get a tour of the facility. Day one, you don't get your world rocked. Day one is not a turnaround. But their arrival is a spark that can lead to turnarounds. Using that as the continued example. That arrival can lead to turnaround, but in the moment, not a turnaround. Okay. We will be in this kind of vibration all day long. The transits are the most exact in the overnight hours for us here in the States. Of course, you're in other countries, and it's going to be in a little bit of a different time zone for you guys. The only other thing that's happening on the 4th is going to happen in the evening time between 7 and 9 p.m. So I'm going to get this to 7:30. And this is whenever Mercury, 13 degrees, 14 minutes on the screen, hits its exact square to the moon in Taurus. Right now, I've got it at 12 minutes and 56 minutes. So it goes the most exact closer to like 8 p.m. But I always give that 2-hour window. Like this is whenever we're going to feel it the most. Mercury did just go through its trine to Jupiter. Jupiter just did some turnarounds. The moon is in Venus's sign, and Venus just made an arrival into Aries. So part of this latter part of the day can be like questioning, like, oh, how did it go? How was your first day? How was everything going on? Hey, I had an idea. That type of thing. It can be a questioning. It can be an imposing of information, some levels of communication, very specific ideas in some way, but not super, super heavy. I want to be clear about that part. This part does not feel heavy. A lot of the vibration that felt far more intense and connected and heavy was more from the latter half of the 3rd going into the overnight hours of the 4th. By the time we get into this late part of the evening, this particular transit does not feel intense. It doesn't feel heavy. It just feels like communication and questioning. For a lot of people to be questioning, how was your day? How was everything going? For other people, it's going to be giving direction about, okay, so first day went this way, and I'm glad you got to meet some people. Do you actually remember names? No, that's okay. That's why we wear name tags. It'll be fine. How was your meeting? How was this thing? How was that appointment? How did that go? That's the type of vibration between the Mercury moon square, just to be clear. So not super impactful. It goes the most exact between 7 and 9 p.m. And then after that, not a whole lot going on. We're going to go ahead and get into the 5th. So first things first, whenever it comes to the 5th, between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. Central Standard Time, we're going to go through our first quarter moon. So we have the sun, 16 degrees, 44 minutes right here. I've got the moon at 16 degrees, 27 minutes at this 1:30 area. So we're right at the start. That first quarter moon kind of goes more exact around 2 a.m., just to be clear. But I'm looking at the moon as in Venus' sign, and Venus is still at that 0 degree mark of Aries. So whatever is starting, whatever our spark has been, whatever information has been here, also feeds into the buildup in the energy. Whenever it comes to the first quarter moon, everything from this point has a buildup to a full moon that's going to happen the next week. So be aware again of that spark and that information, because there's a buildup that follows when you go into your second day at the new job. Continuing with that same example, it's not going to be so angsty. You're not going to have the same level of anxiety. You know where the front door is. You know, hopefully, where your office is. You know who you're reporting to. Like, you know a little bit more, and you understand more as you're going into it. We have more of an understanding in this buildup compared to others that have gone on. Now, whenever it comes to Wednesday, the majority of the transits are all going to be lunar transits anyways. So I want to be clear about that. And it's also, as we continue to get closer to Neptune in the North Node and their building conjunction, we have more and more awareness setting in, more and more beliefs setting in, but I don't want to say clarity. It ain't clear at all whenever it comes to Neptune in the North Node. So there's that. Okay. Between 3 and 5 a.m. Central Standard Time, so bumping this a few more hours, Saturn is going to go through a sextile to the moon. This is government. This is authority figures. This is responsibilities. This is somebody that is the adulty or adult in the situation, giving some type of guidance, giving some type of information. Sometimes this actually has to do with an elder. And considering Saturn is hosting Pluto, Mercury, and the sun, the moon has just made squares to Pluto, Mercury, and the sun. Saturn can be like a next part of a continuous vibration from the others, of getting more information, more guidance, and it feeds more into that buildup energy. Sometimes you can be the Saturn person, being the authority figure, giving information, telling someone how to take something forward, dispersing certain responsibilities. Sometimes you are going to be the moon person in the situation, again looking at the adultier adult in the moment. Okay. Between 5:30 and 7:30 a.m. Central Standard Time, so I got this at 6:30, the moon, 19 degrees 22 minutes, is going to go through a sextile to Mars. Now, Mars is still in that square to Chiron. They're still both at that 19-degree mark. So we could still have some continuous vibration that speaks to emotional disruption, or speaks to, again, people just not acting right. The moon hosting said Mars, though, in Taurus feels better. So it's almost like giving comfort to the misaction. Be like, hey, we all make mistakes. It'll be okay. Things can be okay. It doesn't have to be the end of the world. It can be better. It'll be okay. There's some like reassurance in that vibration, given that the moon does very, very well in Taurus. Again, hosting said Mars. Everyone makes mistakes. And that can be like a big part of the topic whenever it comes to Wednesday morning. If somebody's beating themselves up, it's like coming in, sitting down and going, hey, don't beat yourself up. I've been where you're at. I had to deal with this too. I've been divorced. I know what you're going through. I know why you're feeling this way. I know how this goes. I can help. Let's talk it out. Let's talk it through. And there's something very, very key and understanding to the vibration, which will be helpful for a lot of people. Okay. As we get into the afternoon between 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, so I'm going to bump the screen to 1:30, the moon is going to make a conjunction to Uranus. So I've got the screen right now at 1:30 again. So it's Uranus is 23 degrees 16 minutes. The moon is 23 degrees 28 minutes for those that are listening to the audio. When the moon makes a conjunction to Uranus, again, Uranus is the other ruler of Aquarius. So there can be an unexpected meeting, unexpected communication, but this unexpected, exciting type of vibration with Uranus can be a follow-up from the previous events from the previous day. There can be confirmation unexpectedly here, unexpected phone calls. There can be unexpected shifts around technology. And that's just kind of that Uranus vibration in there anyways. This is by itself not super heavy, but in general, like anytime we start to get into Uranus stuff, there can be just expect that unexpected. But this is like an afternoon's like, unexpected pop in, showing up, unexpected marketing person, or unexpected package. Like it's not heavy. So that'll be okay. All right. As we get into the evening time, between 8:30 and 10:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. So I'm going to bump this to 9:30. Neptune is going to make a sextile to the moon. The moon is going to sextile the north node and the south node. Anytime Neptune gets involved, there can be something that speaks to inspiration. There can be the awareness again of beliefs. There can be things tied to spirituality. A lot of times with Neptune, there can be lies, fraud, and deception. You can see why I'm super excited about Neptune in the North Node when I start talking about it here in a minute. Oh, something about beliefs. I believe this to be true. I believe this is how it should go. I believe that I am correct. But then there can also be the other side of those effects. And sometimes Neptune does things to cloud judgment, or we can take something to cloud our judgment. We can take a little sippy sip. We can take a little, and this can be along the lines of like, hey, you want to come over and does it have to be heavy again? There can also be the elaboration of something and telling somebody something that they did not know. There can also be an elaboration of lying to someone. And given, again, North Node and Neptune are so close together, we can also be telling somebody a lie that we have convinced ourselves to be true. And sometimes we will be the Neptune person. Other times we can be the moon person in this situation, be like, you really believe your own shit, don't you? Wow. You really don't believe that you did anything wrong. You cheated on her 20 times, but you didn't do anything wrong and you don't understand why your baby mama hates you. Okay. Okay. You can see a mix of all of it. Is it intense energy? No. But you can be the outside person in certain situations where you can see somebody that is just really convinced of their own bullshit. Other people can be very convinced of their own beliefs. They can feel you can see someone that feels very, very destined, air quotations on destined, to do something. Like it's got to be true. Others can be super inspired. You can be the inspired one. You can be the bullshitter. You can be all of those just as much as you could be the moon person in this situation. And for some of you, you could be both simultaneously. You could be hearing somebody else that is convinced of their bullshit while also feeling very, very secure in your beliefs. Doesn't have to be heavy. In fact, with it being a sextile, it's more of an understanding. But given that the moon right now is in Venus's sign, part of those beliefs can also feel empowered. So fueled belief systems. Okay. After the sextile to Neptune, the moon is going to go void. It's not really going to be doing anything. We're going to go ahead and get into the 6th. And right after midnight, specifically at 12:44 a.m. Central Standard Time, the moon is going to go into Gemini. It's going into Mercury's sign. Yay! Thank God. We need some logic. We need some logic to counterbalance Neptune and the North Node stuff. And I'll cover a little bit more of that here in just a minute whenever those two get closer. But there's something very unclear yet clear about that vibration that I'm really stuck on. Okay. Between 2:30 and 4:30 a.m. Central Standard Time, Venus is going to make a sextile to the moon. You can see that part right here. This is the action I want to take. This is how I want to respond. This is how I want to do something. This is how I feel like I should go. This is the step that we need to take. This is how I think we need to respond. Now, again, earlier in the week, I said that there can be something that is a trigger. For some people, it was over the weekend going into Monday the 3rd. For other people, it literally was somewhere in that Monday, Tuesday timeframe. We had something that it was a bit of a trigger. And for a lot of people, it has taken a few days to understand how we needed to respond. And for a lot of people, when the moon was going through Taurus, it was exactly that. It was trying to understand the steps I need to take from here. When it comes to this part of the vibration, Venus is implying an action, implying her desire, implying something onto the moon. Simultaneously, between 3:30 and 5:30 a.m., so I'm just going to bump this to 4:30, after the moon separates from its exact sextile to Venus, it enters a trine from Pluto. Trines are triangles, air to air, flow to flow, ideas to ideas. Now, Pluto trine the moon can have intensity to it. It can have triggers to it. But considering we have so much in air signs, it's more along the lines of it's a trigger, it's a spoken trigger. It's an implied trigger, not an emotional one. It's saying something that sparks an idea, sparks information, sparks minced words, that type of thing. It doesn't have to necessarily be a spark, but at the same time, considering Pluto in this vibration and it being almost the most empowered planet going on right now, there can be these things around fear and frustration and society and people. And again, Aquarius represents people. Gemini represents the twins, which is people. This can have to do with things that are going on in society just as much as they can have things that's going on in your household, in your immediate circle. So be aware of that. And there can be news and communication, again, that speaks even more to this is the action or reaction I wish to take. Okay. Now, a lot of that's happening in those early morning hours. After the moon separates from its trine to Pluto, this can kind of set the stage for how the entire day is going to go. For some people, they're going to feel very empowered to take certain steps forward. Others are going to be very, very frustrated with the type of energy that they're working with throughout the day. The next thing that's going to happen is not going to happen until later in the day. So between 4:32, so I'm going to bump this to 4:30, and 5:05, this is whenever Neptune and Venus are going to go through their first CONTRA-ANTISCIA. Now, I talked about this in the month ahead forecast, these indirect transits. Over the course of the 6th and the 7th, we go through a large ANTISCIA between Jupiter and Mars that's building right here. But in between their signs, we have a series of ANTISCIAs. CONTRA-ANTISCIAs. CONTRA-ANTISCIAs are secret alliances. Neptune, being connected to the North Node right here, is very fueled by a belief system, and Venus is reacting to it. So many people, depending on what Venus and Neptune represented for you over the weekend, depending on how Monday and Tuesday went for you, by the time we get into the vibration of Thursday and Friday, we are aware of an action or a reaction that we must take. And it has to do with whatever the Neptune inspiration, they're saying that very loosely, inspiration has been. By the time we get to the latter half of the 6th, the latter half of Thursday, we are going to be far more aware and accepting of something that we need to do moving forward. I'm going to keep that going. As we get into the evening time, between 7:30 and 9:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, now we have a direct transit. I got it at 8:30 for those that are listening to audio only. I've got Jupiter at 11 degrees, 17 minutes. I've got the moon at 11 degrees and 25 minutes. They are hitting their exact conjunction closer to like 8:15 time frame, but you can see this here. The moon is making a conjunction to Jupiter. Neptune is in Pisces. Jupiter is the traditional ruler of Pisces. A lot of the next few months is going to be fueled between, again, Pisces and Aries. Jupiter just turned direct, just turned around. The moon hitting this first conjunction to Jupiter can be an inspiration. It can be an idea. It can be the voicing to another person that we know what we need to do next. I know the action that I must take. We just had a CONTRA-ANTISCIA between Venus and Neptune. That could have been very internalized energies, the secret alliance, the secret meeting, the secret confirmation. For some people, the internal confirmation that's going to lead to a physical action. Whenever the moon hits the conjunction to Jupiter in the evening time, it's like sitting down and talking with your teacher, talking with someone that you can have inspiration from, and telling them, I have an idea, but I want your feedback. I need your information. I need the lessons. I need insight from you. Can you help me? For some of you, you will be the Jupiter person, and you'll be the one giving insight in this moment, giving knowledge, giving an understanding of what's necessary and the best ways to react from here. You can be learning about something that internalizes an idea that you are adamantly against another person, even if they don't know that you're against them. You can learn about something that triggers frustration and triggers opposition, even though you're not directly speaking in opposition. So a lot of the 6th and the 7th has both external, but the external is not big, but a lot are internal that are going to compromise, feed into, have the ripple effect to the external. So this week is very, very interesting. And that's why I'm saying there's a spark. There is a spark. The moon's conjunction to Jupiter for some people can be a spark. Now, as the evening progresses, we're going to go ahead and bump this. Actually, yeah, we're going to bump this just a little bit longer. As the evening progresses, this is the evening that the North Node and Neptune are going to hit their exact conjunction. So it actually goes the most exact between 8:15 and 2 a.m. Central Standard Time. So I got it at 9:30. You can see Neptune, North Node, both of them, 28 degrees, 9 minutes. For a lot of people, this vibration is still a part of Thursday. For even more people, it's going to be a part of Friday. But it really kind of comes down to what Neptune represents for you, what you are being fueled by, what you've been consumed by lately, and hitting a bit of a peak of said consumption. Now, when I say consumption, for some people, consumption is literally drinking. That is a real way to talk about an alcohol addiction, is the word consumption. And there can be those people that they are feeling so intense that they must disconnect from reality, that they need something to help them disconnect. And this can be very consuming in said ways. For other people, you can be consumed by your belief system. The moon and Jupiter are still in their conjunction when I'm saying this next part. The internal downloads for those of us that are energetically susceptible and we get the downloads from the universe, the 6th is going to be a lot. But it's also going to be a lot of things that we're not seeing clearly. And you might get one vision, one tune in, one thing in your downloads that in that moment are still not clear, but they're still going to fuel reactions. They can still be a spark. And a lot of the energy of Thursday feels like exactly that. And again, the Neptune North Node conjunction, it's not just on the 6th. We are still in it going into the 7th. So now I got it on February 7th. Here's North Node, here's Neptune, both of them still 28 degrees, 9 minutes. Nobody's doing anything fast. They're going to stay in their conjunction until 2 a.m. And there's a lot more transits to Friday. So whenever it comes to whatever our belief is, whatever we're consumed by, whatever we're fascinated with, whatever we're sticking to, whatever that vibration is, for some people, it's going to be very easy to figure out. For other people, you're like, I'm not really consumed by anything, yet you're still picked up some new hobby that you don't want to let go of. And as soon as you have to go do something adult-like, you want to come right back to it, whether that's a cartoon, crocheting, drinking, I don't care what it is. There's something, as soon as you are able to disconnect from the world, that this is the only thing that brings you comfort right now. So you kind of innately are consumed by it. There's a fascination to it. For other people, it's much, much bigger. And it really kind of comes down to, again, how you're handling this energy. But that Neptune North Node stuff, we've been building to it for weeks. It goes exact here. And luckily, as the weeks continue from here, that means it'll start to dwindle down, but we will still be making very fueled, sparked decisions that we are not seeing clearly. Oh, it's so much fun. Okay. So next thing, between 5:56 a.m. Central Standard Time and 6:30 a.m. So I'm going to bump this a few more hours to go ahead and get to 6:30. We got a couple things that are going to instigate right here. First things first, Pluto is going to hit its exact sextile to Venus. So here is Pluto, 2 degrees, 15 minutes. Here is Venus, 2 degrees, 15 minutes. So it is very much exact right here in this time frame. Pluto, it is, again, trigger, fear, frustration, power struggles, power dynamics, hidden power dynamics, abuses of power. And again, Venus is becoming very, very fueled. Each little day of Venus going through Aries, she's a little bit more empowered and a little bit more fueled. And if somebody is doing something that feels like an abuse of power and tries to implement that towards Venus in any type of way, it is not going to go their way. Now, simultaneously to Venus's sextile to Pluto, we also have Mercury going through its trine with the moon. Now, I'm not moving the screen. I still got it at 6:30 a.m. Mercury's trine to the moon can be felt the most exact between 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. So that's why I wasn't moving the screen. Mercury is in the higher authority. Mercury is in Saturn's sign. That part's going to be very important because we're also building into a Saturn moon square. Pluto's in Saturn sign, Mercury's in Saturn sign. Saturn is going to square the moon this morning. There can be some type of information that we don't want to hear, that we don't like to hear. And again, there could be even more things that fuel that spark, fuel that trigger, fuel what it's going to take for that first stone to hit the water. There's those little things they're going to set in. And again, it's the first it's the first Venus Pluto in the series of 3. And this is all in new areas of the sky. So a lot of this can be new triggers. Whenever Mercury comes in and has that trine, Mercury in the higher authority, giving communication, giving a decision, giving guidance, giving information. But again, we also have that building square with Saturn. Now, Saturn square is going to most exact between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. So we're not quite in it with the 6:30 a.m. that I have it on the screen, but it's still a part of the morning. But it's like you get the news first from someone else, Mercury, trine moon, of like, hey, the boss is looking for you. Really? Well, we kind of had it out earlier this week. I don't know if I want to talk to him. Well, he is looking for you. And about 30 minutes to an hour later, that's when the boss finds you. That's what it feels like. Mercury trine moon to then Saturn square moon. It's like you get the news and you get that information that there's an issue, that something's up, but it's the warning that the boss is looking for you. Okay. I'm going to keep this going. Again, you can feel the Saturn square moon the most exact between 7 and 9 a.m. Some of you are just going to wake up that morning and have an email letting you know that when you get to the office, I need to see you first thing. We need to talk first thing. We need to talk about these numbers. We need to work on something. I need to let you know something has occurred. It can be that type of thing. Saturn in this higher authority, giving a push to the moon. It is something coming from that person in the position of power. Sometimes you will be the Saturn person in that position of power, giving guidance, giving information, giving, like, expressing your authority. For some people, this is going to have to be news that has to do with an elder. If some of you are taking care of your grandpa, your aunt, your parents, or anything like that. I mean, a lot of you know that I take care of my mom full time. So sometimes Saturn will have to do with that authority figure in that regard. It's going to have to do with the elder. This can have to do about like a push of responsibility, and not necessarily responsibility that we want to take on. It can also be the push of a judgment. And given the Pluto Venus part of that, the judgment can piss you off. And I need you guys to be prepared for that. Oh, it'll be a fun morning. So fun, so fun, so fun. Between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. Central Standard Time, the sun is going to go through a trine with the moon. Now, this part all by itself doesn't feel incredibly crazy. A lot of it feels like we've got this like lingering effect throughout the entire day. As the sun hits the trine to the moon, there can be words expressed and understanding, emotional capacity in that understanding, a logical capacity in that understanding of like, you catch somebody after they walk out of the boss's office and they walk into the bathroom ready to quit. Like you just see that frustration in their face and you have to walk in after them going, hey, it's going to be okay. there's a fucking asshole. I get it. It's gonna be okay. It is. It's gonna be fine. Let it go. Breathe it out. Talk it out. Yell at me. Cuss at me. You can get it out of your system. It's gonna be okay. You know, the boss has been on one lately. Like that type of thing. It's kind of coachy. Okay. Now, the reason I feel like there's so much aggression throughout this entire day is because this is the day that we're building for the actual Antiscia between Mars retrograde and Jupiter. So we're close to it right here. Basically, if I was to fold the chart at this line where Gemini and Cancer meet, Mars and Jupiter are going to lay on top of each other. And this is that secret opposition. And there can be things in the office that it's like the boss says the wrong thing to the wrong person, or he says it to the right person. And suddenly everybody starts to line up behind the other person going, he said what to you? He accused you of what? He said, well, how do I fix it? I know that's bullshit. I know this is a lie. But it's like it sparks something. It fuels a fire. It fuels frustration. It fuels aggression. It fuels certain people to see someone else's behavior as misbehavior. And that is very dominant in the energy as we go through Friday, but it's not an emotional response. It's like a very big awareness, considering both Mercury and the moon are in air signs. That helps out a lot. Okay. Now that actual Antiscia goes the most exact between 12:43 and 2:35 p.m. Central Standard Time. In this same time frame, we're also going to have a sextile between Chiron and the moon. So right now I've got the screen at 11:30. Here's Chiron, 19 degrees, 43 minutes. Here is the moon, 20 degrees, 0 minutes. The fix, all week we had a square between Mars and Chiron, kind of instigating a vibration of like a misaction, reactivating an old wound, or someone's misaction, reactivating or activating a point of where we need to fix something. And depending on how that part went for you earlier in the week, it's like we know right now, like this is the fix or this is the wound. And again, we're voicing it. But whatever we're voicing, whatever it is, if there's a logical element here, like we're very, very aware that our buttons have been pushed. It is a spark. It is triggers. It is awareness, logical awareness that is going to lead to more expression and more ideas as we continue. Oh, whenever it comes to the rest of Friday, after the actual vibration of the moon Chiron sextile, that's the last direct transit. The Antiscia between Mars and Jupiter, again, it's felt the most exact between 12:43 and 2:35 p.m., but we're building to it all day long. And after that part of the vibration, there's no more direct transits to Friday. So whenever we're in a mood next weekend, or whenever we're feeling motivated to do something next weekend, it's not emotional. It is a mood. It is our mindset. It is how we're feeling. It is what we're thinking. It's how we're going to go forward from here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get this into the 8th. Our first transit's going to happen right after midnight between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. Central Standard Time. Neptune is going to square the moon. Therefore, the moon is going to square the nodes. We haven't had our first eclipse yet, but we also haven't had, there's a lot of things we haven't got into quite yet in this new vibration. Now, what I was explaining before earlier in the week, whenever the moon was in Taurus, making the sextile to Neptune, that one felt a lot easier to deal with. This one doesn't feel nearly as easy. And considering it's happening in such a late hour for a Friday night, but it's the morning hours for actual Saturday, there can be something again about being fueled, the consumption, so the drinky drink, the smoky smokes, that type stuff, of someone drowning themselves in that level of consumption and then voicing something that we did not know, voicing something that we hadn't heard before. That's kind of a jolt to the system. Why am I saying it that way? The moon is in Mercury's sign, hitting that square to Neptune. And after the square to Neptune, the moon is going to go void and it's going to go into Cancer. It's going to go into an emotional sign. However, the other thing that's happening is that Mercury is coming into the actual conjunction to the sun. We're getting closer to the cazimi. And whatever gets revealed, whatever information comes to light, whatever comes into focus over the course of the weekend, for many people is going to be directly fueled from whatever happened in the moon through Gemini transit. Considering Mercury and the sun are less than a degree apart when this square happens, for some people, this can be the clarity moment. And it's having some type of information, something that we did not know before, a belief, an idea, a lie, a fraud, a deception, being implied, spoken, pushed onto another person. But it's like as soon as you hear the story, as soon as you hear the comment, as soon as you hear whatever it is, there is a clarity that follows. And that is spoken through the Mercury cazimi. There is a clarity that follows. It might not be clarity in this moment. It might be one of those things that you have to get through a situation and you have to continue. And then you just keep going back to it all weekend going, what the hell was that supposed to mean? And it takes time for the clarity to set in for some people. For other people, it will be very instantaneous. You just won't act upon it instantaneously, just to be clear. Oh, Neptune square to the moon, again, between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. Central Standard Time. Neptune is still very tight to the North Node. It's not exact by minute anymore, but it is still very exact by degree. Be aware of the downloads. Be aware of the dreams. Be aware of the things that are coming through. Can't stress that part enough. Because the downloads can also be the implementing of what care, consideration, or emotional response you start to handle and process over the course of the rest of the weekend. Please note I said the rest. Okay. At 5:05 a.m. Central Standard Time, that is when the moon is going to go into Cancer. As soon as the moon goes into Cancer, it will start to build to an exact square from Venus. That is going to be felt the most exact between 9:30 and 11:30 a.m. So I got the screen at 10:30. I've got Venus 3 degrees 2 minutes. I've got the moon 3 degrees 3 minutes. Boom, there it is. Now, again, Venus has had a couple of days to get her bearings about her. She's had a couple of days to pick her energy up, to get a little bit more fueled, to get a little bit more of a response. And her desire, her belief, her reaction, the action that she's taking can piss some people off. It can hurt some feelings, considering her square to the moon. There can be something that triggers emotional responses, but it can also be the action and the response that we are taking is also going to have care and consideration for another set of people too. For some people, this emotional response will be like, we're going to do something to go make ourselves feel more beautiful. But I don't mean this in the pampered sense. I mean this in the sense of like, you want to go for a run? You want to go to the park with me? You want to go for a walk? You want to go for a hike? Let's do something else. I need to get the funk from this week out of my system. Can we go do something? Can we go take an action? And even that part of that action can have an element of self-care and emotional processing, but there's still a desire to take an action to help us feel better. Now, not everybody's going to be okay with the idea of a hike. Be like, girl, I have asthma. Really? No. Can we rethink part of this? Can we do something a little bit different? Let's go to the gym, because you can get on the one machine and I can get on a different machine and we can still do some stuff together. But dang, that type of thing. Oh, Venus is square to the moon does not have to be heavy. It can trigger emotional responses, but it can also be like more along the lines of like, let's do this kind of thing to take care of ourselves. And that's more of what it feels like. Now, whenever it comes to the weekend, we've got a couple things, again, building all day long. One, the Mercury cazimi is building all day on Saturday. It does not go exact until Sunday. The other thing that is building all day on Saturday that does not go exact until Sunday is Saturn's trine to Mars. So as we do those things for emotional clarity, as we do those things to take care of things around the house, to do a little bit more for ourselves, to feel a little bit better, as we take those actions, there is a way of there's a form of meditation, I'm starting to say this backwards now, that is called active meditation. And if you have had one-on-ones with me before, I've talked to you about this, like the best ways for you to meditate sometimes can be active meditation. A lot of Saturday feels like active meditation. And as you go through active meditation, you get rounds of clarity. You get more information. You get the downloads. You get clear on something. Now, that clarity can still have an emotional response to it. Once you see the light, you can become far more aware of, like, I should have never dated him anyways. And that's just the moon in Cancer. I can't help that. But in a lot of other ways, it's to be like, oh my God, I see it so differently now. And that's fair. Now, I'm going to bump this to 6:30. What I start to talk about next is going to encompass both the transits, and that's why I ended up bumping this to 6:30. Between 5:47 and 6:29 a.m. Central Standard Time, i.e. 6:30. This is when we have the exact Mercury cazimi simultaneously. From 6:29, ironically enough, to 8:32 a.m. This is when Saturn will have its second trine to Mars. The first one happened last fall, specifically in that late September, early October timeframe during eclipse season. That's when the last one happened. This one is happening before eclipse season, but we still have the rulers of eclipse season kind of activated, specifically Mercury in this regard, because we're getting clarity on something. And remember, Mercury is hosting that south node and it's hosting Jupiter. So whatever comes to light can have to do with something that has to do with a lesson. Jupiter just turned direct this week. We are building towards eclipse season. We're about a month away from it right now. And the first eclipse is going to be in Virgo. It's going to be in Mercury's sign. So we can be getting some kind of clarity of something that we need to let go of, someone that we need to let go of, a shift in certain ways, a shift in our ideas. And this shift can have some level of dismissal, relief, letting something go. But also whatever we're letting go of can have a long-term effect because it's a Mercury cazimi in Saturn sign, in Aquarius. Now, again, Saturn is at play here. Saturn is in that trine to Mars. You can reveal something to someone that you're no longer going to take responsibility. You're no longer going to do certain things for another person because you don't believe in their misbehavior. Saturn trine Mars retrograde in Cancer. I can't help you anymore. I can't protect you anymore. I won't do this for you anymore. I just can't. Something about the weekend has clarity. That clarity, what gets revealed, it has to be something different. And it can still have to do with, like, you have been behaving so inappropriately. You've been so consumed by something, and I can't support it anymore. Now, that can be one way. Mars is retrograde, re-entering the trine to Saturn. And Saturn is direct this time, so that can be a different part of it. We can have a random phone call, a random text message, a random arrival at your door. For some people, it will be that, of somebody coming back around saying, I've made a mistake and I need help. Again, the Mercury cazimi is happening in Saturn sign. Saturn is in the higher authority of this trine, but Mars is coming back. Mars is coming forward. Mistakes have been made. I did stupid shit. I need help. I need clarity. I need money. I need something. Now, whether you choose to help someone or not is a very different conversation. But there is something here about clarity, information coming to light, something coming just to surface, and some entity, a lot of disruptive energy, emotional disruption in a lot of ways, coming back around in big parts of this week, whether it's the uh Mars Chiron square from earlier in the week, or this part right here, a lot of it feels like a test. But considering after the Mars Saturn trine, Mars is going to start to slow down. He's going to go to, he only goes to 17 degrees, and that's when he turns direct, is at 17 degrees. If somebody's coming back saying, I've messed up and I need help, this can be triggering the response to create corrective action. And again, it is your choice whether you're going to allow someone back in or not. You do not have to. Some people have to live with the consequences of said decisions, and that clarity can be exactly that. I'm not going to help you anymore. Or I'll give you this little bit of help, but this is the help for the last time. I'm not going to do this with you again. This will be the last time. I'm only helping you because those are my grandkids. That type of thing. Those are my kids. Those are my nieces. Those are my nephews. That type of thing. Okay. Now, as the afternoon progresses, the moon is going to be in Cancer all day long, and the moon is going to get involved with the Saturn-Mars trine, and that's going to happen between 1 p.m. and 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. So here's the moon, 18 degrees, 43 minutes. It's just past its conjunction to Mars at 18 degrees, 19 minutes. It's still in that trine from Saturn, 18 degrees, 24 minutes. Again, we've had that Mercury cazimi. We've had something get revealed. We've had some clarity. If somebody shows up at your door, just going with that continued example, and you didn't have it planned, but you had other things on your agenda that day, your afternoon guest can show up at your door going, what's he doing here? What's that? What's going on? Hey, you didn't tell me they were coming over. You didn't even tell me you were talking to them anymore. I wasn't talking to them. They showed up at my door overnight, early this morning, asking for help. Oh, the moon coming in later is the third party in a lot of ways. It's like, oh, are you going to help them? I'm at least letting them sleep it off. I'm at least letting them take care of this. I'm at least going to help them do this. Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. That's so interesting. A lot of times the moon coming into some direct major transit later is the spectator. It can also be the person that gives extra information. It can be the person that Saturn calls going, hey, come get your kid. They showed up drunk at my door. oh, come get your husband. Come get your person. Come get this emotional disruption and get it out of my living room. That type of thing. You can be out with someone and be like, you will never guess who called me this morning, who showed up at my door this morning, and it's getting the tea. And that person can play both sides and hit that conjunction to Mars, or they can tell you about their own levels of disruption. A lot of the times the moon is a spectator when it comes to major transits, like I said before. So again, you can have somebody else coming over for Super Bowl Sunday. I'm pretty sure this is Super Bowl Sunday now. Going, what's he doing here? And it just kind of goes from there. Okay. As the afternoon progresses between 3:30 and 5:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, Chiron is going to go through a square with the moon. So I got this at 4:30 on the screen. Here's Chiron, 19 degrees, 47 minutes. Here's the moon, 19 degrees, 49 minutes. Considering Chiron has been loosely in the square to Mars all week, we have still got some continued vibration from what's been going on throughout the entire week. There could be something about, like, I might have an idea of how to fix it. I might have an idea of what we can do differently. I might be able to help. I might be able to help them find a job, blah, 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 blah. That's a big possibility for some people. For other people, this can be because said person has showed up at your best friend's door and now everybody's there for Super Bowl Sunday. It gives you the chance, being the spectator, to explain to someone how they hurt you in the past, how they created a wound. For some people, it would be giving the idea of like what they can do to overcome traumas and triggers and frustrations. And there can be helpful lessons that even still speak to the levels of clarity, given that we're still in the Mercury cazimi vibration. Okay. After that, the only other thing that's going to happen is going to happen right before midnight. So between 10 p.m. and midnight. So I got this at 10:30. Uranus is going to go through a sextile with the moon. This is not super heavy. By itself, it's not super heavy, but there can be, unexpected information that comes from a source that we did not anticipate, or we can be learning about something when it comes to certain people that we do not know them. We can be giving advice about situations that we don't know both sides. Why am I saying that? Because when the moon goes through the sextile to Uranus, it's also going through a quincunx with the sun and Mercury. I haven't really had to bring up quincunxes this week, but a lot of times you have to get advice from people that are not familiar with situations. And this can be exactly that. You can be getting some kind of story, some type of information, something that you didn't know, something kind of exciting, something a little unexpected, but you only know them. You don't know the other side. You don't know the other half. You don't know the other side of the story. And you can be getting some type of information, or you can be talking to someone unexpectedly and they start bringing up a situation with somebody that you don't like, that you don't vibe with. And that would be the moon quincunx to Mercury and the sun. You can be learning about something that just happened and not necessarily agreeing with what just happened in this later part of the evening. This can be a little bit more catty and tea-like versus anything else, but there will be some people that they just don't like what has been revealed, what has come to light, what has come into focus, given that quincunx energy. Now, whatever starts to unfold here can also be giving advice to how we go into the next week, considering we're building to squares to Uranus right now, and we're building again to a full moon in Leo that's going to square this Uranus. So we can be planting some seeds right here that won't even take effect until the next week. So be aware of that. Okay. Oh, the Antiscia between Mars and Jupiter is going to be something that once it completely activates, we're building to it right now. We're building to it all week. And once it kind of goes into play, Jupiter being direct, yes, Jupiter's still in his detriment, but Jupiter being direct, that clarity of what we start to do, the implications of what starts to come through, it's going to lead to a series of responses. And the responses are going to be to the misaction of Mars. And for a lot of people, it's going to be another thing that implements and solidifies certain detachments and cutoffs that are going to be necessary. But it is also going to create another level of animosity between certain entities, because there's going to be people that want to get something straight, that want to follow what's factual, what's real, what's aware, something that is cognitively, mentally vibing for everyone. And it's going to lead to levels of resistance. Like we're trying to comprehend so many things. And the more and more somebody doesn't want to act right, the more and more people don't want to act right, the more and more people start to do these things that instigate more and more emotional triggers, Mars being retrograde in Cancer. It's going to set the stage for a vibration that's going to occur throughout the entire month. And that Antiscia is the one large one that I was talking about in the indirect transits of the month ahead forecast. But it is going to be really setting the stage for the pattern of that certain fueled beliefs, going with the Pisces side now, is going to fuel reactions. Certain dead set beliefs are going to fuel certain reactions. And those reactions are going to be those Aries transits when they start to come through. Over the course of January, we did not have any more transits really in the sign of Aries. We had the moon in Aries once, but that only lasts for like 2 days. The North Node left Aries, so that really changed the dynamic. Now that Venus goes into Aries, and again, that's happening exact on the 4th, so that happens this week. Once that occurs, it fuels a reaction. It fuels responses. But we also have those Antiscias that are going to start. We're going to have the Antiscia between Neptune and Venus, immediately following the actual conjunction. So whatever happened in the first 2 days, February 1st and 2nd, so the weekend before, whatever happened, the 3rd and 4th, going into Monday and Tuesday of this actual week, it's going to lead to a reaction. It's going to lead to a response, but it's also not going to be an immediate response. It can lead to immediate aggression and frustration, but not an immediate response. I think the response is going to take a little bit more time to see how something is going to work out. Now, for some people, what you're dealing with is medical, and that feels very, very different than what's going on in society. And if you're going into a medical situation that it's like something happened over the weekend, and I know for a lot of you, it did, because as soon as it hit, y'all were in my DMs again going, holy crap, this happened with my mother-in-law. This happened with my sister. This happened with my brother. This is where it hit. Like, we had it this way. I'm like, okay, breathe for one. But two, now we have one, taking the moments to get that measurable and back under control. Two, figuring out whatever caused that physical trigger. Because for a lot of people, the medical astrology is going to be very important going into the spring. I cannot stress this enough. Whatever that physical trigger was, it's going to take a few days to, one, figure out what it was, and two, once we figure out what it is, then we can start to dissect the directions of how we handle it. And I got to be honest, for some people, whatever the initial response is to handle a negative situation in your health, some part of it's not going to stick. Some part of it's not going to work out. Because again, Venus is in shadow. Venus will turn retrograde, and Venus will come back and hit multiple conjunctions to Neptune. And if we're going into health issues, I really don't like this vibration, because I think we're going to have a lot of trial and error. And in that trial and error, it's going to fuel a whole different level of emotional responses out of people, because they're going to feel like they're not being seen or heard. But also, they're not, that certain people will not necessarily understand that part of what the way these people's body is responding to things will not medically make sense, because their response is energetic. And I will be honest, most medical professionals don't like to tie the two together. I'm aware of that. Many of you guys can be aware of that. I'm letting you know that some of the responses that people are having to this energy physically in their body, it's not going to make sense to a lot of people that are in medical professions. They're not even going to see the same pattern the way that someone like me looks for them. But it doesn't make me better. I can just show where we're going to see the pattern. How you fix the situation is not on me. I am not the medical professional, and that's why I don't try to diagnose people. But if you know to look for that part of the vibration, my goal has always been to help people get ahead of it. But not everybody is going to be dealing with this in the medical sense, and I know that. And there's going to be a lot more people that Neptune's conjunction to the North Node and the consuming vibration that it is will take weeks before we can start to see something clearly again. And the problem is, immediately following the Neptune North Node conjunction, we start to lead into a Saturn North Node conjunction. And that level of reality is going to be way more intense than the Neptune, because a lot of Saturn's vibration is going to be putting his foot down in ways that we haven't experienced yet. Keyword there is yet. And we are going to be in intensity, and we are going to be in volatility for quite some time. There's no way around it. It's more along the lines of, when something starts to get so bothersome, you have to know when to check out and no longer lean into whatever's going on in the media, whatever's going on in your newsfeed. You have to turn it off sometimes and not let that be the thing that consumes you. Because just as much as I've had people in my DMs being very concerned about their family members. And my hope is that everything will go well for all of them. I have had just as many people in my DMs being very fueled by a belief that something is going to go horribly wrong. And a lot of it feels very much an energy that is more fearful. And I don't deny that we don't have a reason to be fearful, but we're not going to have full clarity as to what this is leading into for quite some time. We have to go through the motions. And whenever it comes to a lot of this vibration, it is going to get worse before it gets better. And this is why I'm saying every once in a while, you have to check yourself and check out of whatever you are being consumed by. So if we get into parts of this week and you need a different level of clarity, not just a reading, I'm meaning along the lines of like getting out of the funk. It means turning off your phone, taking your ass outside and doing that active meditation. Go for a walk, go for a run, go work out, go do something that can get you out of your funk. And don't come back to anything until you have had a break from that funk. Go eat, go do whatever you need to do. Try your best not to let media consume you, because so many of you are. And I know that because you end up in my DMs, which is okay. I can handle it. But I forbid to let these kinds of things consume and control me. And my hope is that more and more people will follow that suit. If you're willing to listen to me with rule number 3 and no new relationships until April, then listen to me when I'm saying don't let social media consume you. It's so easy to allow it. Check out sometimes. It's going to be good for you. Okay. I love and appreciate every single one of you. Hit me up with questions, hit me up with concerns. Remember, you can book your sessions directly through the website. If you're needing something more immediate that's not available on the website, you can always email me or DM me directly. That's okay. I will talk to everybody very, very soon. Subscribe.